After the attack on the U.S. Capitol on January the 6th, some of America's biggest companies publicly announced that they would be suspending donations to Republican members of Congress who objected to the Electoral College results. Now, the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, is trying to expand the Democrats' narrow margin in the chamber by overturning the state-certified results of Iowa's 2nd district race, in which Representative Miller Meeks beat Democrat Rita Hart by 6 votes. And Senate Republicans, who were not among those who voted against the election certification in January, are telling those same companies to be consistent with their message and publicly take a stand now as they did back then. Joining me now to talk about this is Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton, who was among the U.S. senators who issued the call to these companies last week. Senator, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Tony. It's always good to be on with you, and it's good to be in good company with Tony Perkins now that you've been sanctioned by the Chinese Communist Party, just like me, for standing up for religious freedom of Christians and other oppressed religious minorities in China. So I just want to say you should wear that like a badge of honor, Tony.
Well, thank you, Senator. It's good to be in good company. Of course, you were one of the early ones sounding the alarm about China, even last year over the coronavirus. So you know that this group, the Chinese Communist Party, is up to no good. I will ask you a question about that, though. This suggests to me that and I was talking about this yesterday with Gordon Chang, that I think this shows a little bit of concern and desperation that they're trying to save public face internationally as more and more countries now are speaking out about what's actually happening within the borders of China.
Yeah, it's well past time, too, that so many of our partners and allies around the world are condemning the Chinese Communist Party for the genocide they're committing against their own people and the oppression of people of faith of all stripes in mainland China. And they're sanctioning you. They're even sanctioning some American companies that are not exactly hotbeds of conservative thought. It goes to show that they are concerned about public opinion around the world, and they should be.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about those American companies. Some of those, they deal in double standards. If they didn't deal in double standards, they wouldn't have any standards, in my view. But you sent a letter along with Senator Mitch McConnell, the leader, Republican leader, Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa, and Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa, to these businesses that said, hey, we're suspending donations to those who challenged the election results back in January. And you're saying, okay, what are you going to do now about Democrats that are challenging the certified elections in Iowa? So what's been the response to that letter?
Yeah, Tony, so let's take a step back and set the table here. You had an incredibly close election in Iowa, decided by just 6 votes. However, the Democrat in that election, after losing multiple recounts by bipartisan boards, refused to challenge the results in state court. So the state of Iowa certified its elections, and Marionette Miller Meeks was seated in Congress on January 3rd at a time when the Democrats treated state-certified results as sacrosanct, as if they were handed down on tablets. But now that Joe Biden's the president and they've got a very narrow margin in the House, the Democrats are saying, well, state-certified results, maybe we're going to overturn them. They're having hearings into it at this very moment. So it struck me a couple weeks ago that these companies that condemned Republicans, that said they were going to withhold contributions from Republicans, should apply the exact same standard to the Democrats in the House, starting with Nancy Pelosi, who are disputing the certified election results in Iowa. Now, it won't surprise you, Tony, that we haven't really had much response from these companies. Some of them have sheepishly admitted privately that they are applying a double standard, but no public responses yet. But it is so important, Tony, that conservatives take a stand against some of these woke corporations and organizations like the NCAA or the NFL or the NBA, and we don't let them presume to speak for millions of Americans, and that we hold them to the same standard that they want to apply to conservatives.
Well, and it appears that the majority of American businesses understand what is going on here is not right. Zogby did basically a poll of business leaders. 61% said that the progressive ideas on race, gender, and post-colonialism and the cancel cultures were undermining society, and they were unnecessary. But some of the biggest companies with the biggest platforms and voices seem to be pushing the left's agenda like there's no tomorrow.
They are, Tony. They're trying to indoctrinate their own workforces, making it mandatory that you undergo so-called critical race theory training, which teaches Americans to hate their fellow citizens and to hate their country, to view our skin color as the most important thing about us, as opposed to upholding our Declaration, our Constitution, and respecting the dignity and worth of every person, irrespective of their skin color. These companies are bringing great pressure to bear in politics, whether it's about race, whether it's about transgendered students playing sports, whether it's about the kind of views that employees are able to express, not just on company time, Tony, but on their own personal time as well. There have been so many stories about persons who have been canceled just because of what they say on their own social media accounts when they're not purporting to speak for their company or speak on company time. We have to stand up for the rights of every American to have the freedom of expression and freedom of thought that our country has always held so dear.
Now, in the absence of these companies using the same standard on Democrats that they used on Republicans, which I would be shocked if they did, quite frankly. But do you see Speaker Pelosi moving forward to oust Congresswoman Miller Meeks?
It wouldn't surprise me, Tony. Again, you got to remember, Nancy Pelosi has the smallest majority of Speaker in almost a century. She's lost several members for a few months, even though they come from safe Democratic districts, because they joined the Biden administration. In some of those districts, like in New Mexico, we even have a chance to pick it up in the months ahead. So for her, every single vote counts, and it would not surprise me if she and her liberal allies in the House try to steal this seat away from Marionette Miller Meeks. Now, I tell you, if they do, Tony, I mean, it will be a cold winter in the Congress. And, a lot of Democrats back in January were saying that Republicans who voted against certifying the Electoral College results should be expelled from the Congress.
Right.
Well, perhaps we should apply the same standard to the Democrats. When the Republicans take over the House majority in 2023, anyone who voted to steal that election in Iowa should be seated. How would the Democrats like that, Tony?
Well, I watch this very closely. I watch Senator Mitch McConnell, the leader, Republican leader. He's very calculated. He doesn't waste words. And I saw that, he has weighed in on this both on the Senate floor and, of course, joined the letter that you were a part of. This would suggest to me that this is not something that Mitch McConnell would let pass.
No, Tony, not at all. And, when I thought about this idea that we should demand these companies apply the same standard to Republicans and Democrats, first, of course, I went to Joni Ernst and Chuck Grassley as the senators from Iowa, both good friends of mine. They immediately wanted to join the letter. I thought, too, we should go to the majority, or the once and future majority leader, Mitch McConnell.
He's just a heartbeat away from being majority leader.
No kidding. Who obviously holds great sway in the Congress. And he too said right away, I want to be a part of this. As you said, he's spoken on the floor about it. Not only is the House Republicans aren't going to stand for Democrats stealing this race in Iowa, I can tell you Senate Republicans won't stand for it either.
Yeah, I think, and this would be, I don't know. I just think it would be to me, this would be like one of those old Marine and Navy brawls that breaks out in a bar room. I mean, I just think this would be over the top if, in fact, the Democrats do oust a duly elected, certified member of Congress because she is Republicans. They're going to be watching that very, very close. Before we run out of time, Senator, you were at the border last week with a group of your colleagues from the Senate. Crisis at the border, is that an understatement?
It probably is an understatement, Tony, to call it a crisis. I mean, we saw heartbreaking scenes of young children being held in pens, of young women and young men carrying young children with them after making a long, arduous journey through Mexico. The media, Tony, focuses primarily on these facilities, how many beds they have, and showers and hot meals. But I got to tell you, Tony, that's treating the symptom, not the cause. The cause is Joe Biden's open border policies. If you let them in, more will come. And we have to send a signal to all these would-be migrants that they cannot simply come to our country, make a bogus claim of asylum, and enter our country. That is the humane thing to do, to tell them, don't make this journey. If you do, we are not going to let you in, and we're going to send you back to your country, as was happening in the last year of the Trump administration. The Biden administration is lying outright what was happening. No one, especially children, were being turned into the Mexican desert to starve and die, as Joe Biden says. They were being put on a plane and flown back to countries like Guatemala or Honduras or El Salvador and being reunited with their families there. That's what needs to happen now. Otherwise, you're going to see continued increases of these migrants at our border. And I spoke to many of them, Tony. They all said they were coming for a better job and a better opportunity.
All right, so Senator, what should we be doing there at the border?
Tony, three very simple solutions. First, reapply the public health exclusionary orders to all persons. They've exempted minors. Not surprisingly, they have a new flood of minors. Second, reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy. If you get to our border, you have to stay in Mexico to adjudicate your asylum claim. You don't get released into the country on your own recognizant. And finally, enter safe third country agreements with Central American countries. If you're leaving your country and claiming asylum, you have to make the claim in the first country you enter. You don't get to come all the way to America and make your claim. Joe Biden can do all three of those tomorrow.
All right. Well, we'll have to leave it there, Senator. I want to thank you for joining us, and we'll be continuing to track all of these issues. So good to talk with you.
Thank you.